On the rugged, sun-drenched island of Corsica in 1769, a boy named Napoleon Bonaparte was born, destined for an impossible, world-altering future. His mother, the iron-willed Letizia, instilled a harsh, unyielding discipline that would become the very foundation of his eventual empire. Young Napoleon was isolated and intense, preferring the company of books to peers, viewing the world as a complex machine he needed to master. At the age of 9, he left the warmth of the Mediterranean for France, knowing instinctively that this departure marked his true point of no return. Brienne military school was a gauntlet of cold stone and aristocratic snobbery. He endured endless mockery for his accent and poverty. Every insult, calling him the Italian, was filed away, hardening his resolve and fueling the immense engine of his ambition. Alone in his room, he devoured Plutarch's Lives, measuring his own potential against the military giants of antiquity, constantly preparing. Even a simple winter snowball fight became a lesson in logistics, as he organized and led his comrades with natural tactical genius. His passion for mathematics was absolute. Artillery was the king of battle, demanding the cold, pure precision that defined his mind. He earned entry into the prestigious École Militaire in Paris, arriving as a lean, young man with the piercing eyes of a self-made genius. He lived frugally, rejecting the frivolous aristocratic life of the academy. Austerity was his armor, and work was his only focus. He read the Enlightenment philosophers, Rousseau, Voltaire, absorbing the radical concepts that fueled his discontent with the old regime. The death of his father in 1785 brought instant, crushing responsibility, forcing the young man to become the provider for his entire family. Graduating early at 16, he became an artillery second lieutenant, a future forged in focused intellect and unshakable ambition. Life in the provincial garrisons was quiet, but his mind raced, filling notebooks with political essays and revolutionary military analyses. He tried to write a history of Corsica, a melancholic ode to his lost homeland, before destiny yanked him toward the grander continental stage. The French Revolution exploded like a thunderclap, creating a massive power vacuum and confirming Napoleon's chance had finally arrived. He briefly attempted to champion the Corsican radical cause, but a clash with his mentor, Paoli, forced him to choose France absolutely. The Bonaparte family was branded as traitors and fled Corsica under a storm of public fury, becoming refugees adrift but fiercely united. Turning his gaze from the island for the final time, Napoleon knew his future lay only with the chaotic, powerful destiny of France. He rejoined the Revolutionary Army, finding the perfect, unstable vehicle for his ambition within the passionate, blue-clad mass of zealots. The siege of Toulon in 1793 was his crucible, as the vital port was held by the British while French Republican generals squabbled in the mud. The young captain, thin and intense, ignored the ineffectual assaults and pointed unerringly to the key, the strategic high ground. L'Aiguillette. He argued for a concentration of all firepower, his cold, pure logic overriding the seniority of the old, arrogant generals. Wounded in the thigh during a desperate charge, he refused to stop commanding, fueled by sheer adrenaline and driving ambition. His plan worked perfectly. The British fleet was forced to withdraw in confusion, securing a crushing, definitive victory for France. The reward was instantaneous. Brigadier General at 24. He was now General Napoleon Bonaparte, and the name meant power. The reign of terror swept Paris. His dangerous political association with the Robespierre faction put him directly in the guillotine's shadow. Following the sudden, bloody fall of the Robespierres, Napoleon was swiftly arrested, facing the ultimate penalty of the state. His calm composure and focused defense secured his release. He had survived the political carnage, but his career was stalled. He fiercely refused a demotion to the infantry, stubbornly clinging to his identity as a master artillerist and top-tier commander. He suffered poverty in Paris, his uniform frayed and his meals scarce. Hardship only sharpened the knife edge of his resolve. His life utterly changed when he met Josephine de Beauharnais, an older, sophisticated Creole woman who instantly captivated him. In October 1795, royalist mobs revolted. Paul Barras, desperate for a competent leader, remembered the cold genius of Toulon. Napoleon instantly ordered Murat to secure the cannons, knowing artillery was the absolute key to controlling the capital city. With cold resolve, he unleashed the devastating whiff of grapeshot, violently sweeping the revolutionary mobs from the streets. Silence fell over the steps of St. Roch. The Republic was saved, not by compromise, but by absolute, clinical military force. His reward, Commander-in-Chief. He traded his poverty for supreme command in Paris. The wheel of fortune had decisively turned. Their courtship was passionate and hurried, His intense love letters revealed the vulnerable, fiery soul beneath the hardened military exterior. They married quickly in a rushed civil ceremony. 2 days later, duty called him away to command the demoralized army of Italy. He accepted the command of the supposed backwater post, seeing the map of Italy not as a chore, but as his first great canvas. The army was starving, ragged, and rebellious, a complete shambles lacking effective leadership and supplies. Napoleon's famous, rousing speech promised them glory, honor, and riches on the fertile plains of Italy, replacing their hunger with ambition. The Italian campaign began with a lightning stroke at Montanat, achieving strategic surprise by splitting the Austrian and Sardinian forces. At Arcole, he personally rushed the bridge, flag in hand, defying enemy fire. His individual, theatrical heroism energized his wavering troops. Though momentarily knocked into the mud, the sight of their general leading the impossible charge galvanized his men to secure victory. It was a dazzling, months-long conquest of northern Italy. The world was stunned by the speed and scale of his success. Victory came with a price. France systematically looted Italy's finest masterpieces, shipping art to Paris to enhance its cultural power. Josephine eventually joined him in Milan, reigning as the graceful, if sometimes aloof, empress of the campaign's temporary court. Napoleon didn't just conquer, he reorganized, creating French client states like the Cisalpine Republic, redrawing the political map of Italy. Even the ancient authority of the papacy had to bend. Napoleon dictated the terms of peace, asserting secular dominance. He signed the Treaty of Campo Formio, cementing his status as a major power broker independent of the corrupt Directory government. His return to Paris was a triumph. Greeted by roaring crowds, he was the most celebrated man in the Republic, holding the key to its future. He stood on the Channel coast, seemingly preparing for the invasion of England, but he knew the direct attack was impossible due to naval power. Instead, he decided to strike at Britain's jugular, Egypt, cutting the vital route to the immense wealth of India. This was no ordinary military campaign. He brought dozens of scholars and scientists, an army of the intellect to explore the mysterious Orient. The massive fleet set sail from Toulon, hundreds of ships laden with men and ambition, headed for a strange and sun-scorched destiny. En route, he swiftly captured the supposedly impregnable fortress of Malta, a demonstration of his lightning strategic speed. They landed at Alexandria. His soldiers struggled in the profound desert heat, facing a world utterly alien to their European experience. Their enemy was the fierce, flamboyant Mamluk cavalry, relying on individual bravery and skill against the disciplined French squares. Beneath the shadow of the pyramids, Napoleon famously declared, "Soldiers, 40 centuries look down upon you," and ordered the charge. The French advanced on Cairo. Napoleon attempted to portray himself not as a conqueror, but as a liberator respectful of Muslim traditions. Amidst the military campaign, the scholar's work led to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, unlocking the entire history of ancient Egypt. Then came the fatal blow. Admiral Nelson annihilated the French fleet at Aboukir Bay. Napoleon was instantly trapped, his retreat cut off. Receiving the news, Napoleon's face darkened. He was isolated, his fate dependent on his ingenuity in the face of overwhelming British sea power. He began to govern, establishing institutes and reforming administration, attempting to turn the conquest into a lasting colony. He pushed into Syria to destroy the Ottoman forces gathering there, but the grueling march was marked by brutal heat and dwindling resources. At Acre, he was stopped dead by a stubborn, combined Ottoman and British defense. The siege drained French morale and momentum. The subsequent retreat from Syria was horrific, with the army ravaged by the plague, an ordeal that tested his leadership. He won one final, brilliant land victory against Turkish landings at Aboukir, solidifying French control of Egypt, but his situation was desperate. A secret message reached him. The Directory was collapsing into chaos. The time was ripe for a strong leader. His chance had returned. He prepared to leave in secret, transferring command to General Claver, a necessary abandonment for the sake of seizing political power. He looked back silently at the sleeping French camp. The pull of Paris and the supreme power it offered was irresistible. The French frigate took a treacherous route, miraculously avoiding countless British patrols under the cover of fog and immense luck. He landed at Fréjus to public acclaim. The people were desperate for the strong, stabilizing hand that only he could deliver. The coup of 18 Brumaire was poorly executed. Napoleon, stepping into the council, was shouted down and physically attacked by angry legislators. He stammered, visibly nervous in the face of political hostility. The great military commander was momentarily paralyzed by debate. The legislators physically attacked him, tearing his uniform. The coup was moments away from a complete and humiliating collapse. His brother, Lucien, seized the moment, dramatically appealing to the soldiers outside. Murat led the charge, clearing the chamber with bayonets. The coup succeeded, the constitution was rewritten, and Napoleon took the title First Consul. The Republic was, in reality, dead. He sat between two elderly, puppet consuls, yet there was no doubt who held the real power. All authority revolved around him. Napoleon and Josephine moved into the Tuileries Palace, the ancient, magnificent seat of French royalty. The transition was complete. He brought his characteristic, maniacal energy to civil administration, centralizing power and demanding relentless efficiency from his ministers. Faced with renewed Austrian aggression, he crossed the Alps again, leading a massive army of the reserve to surprise the enemy in their rear. At Marengo, the battle turned against him. His forces were dispersed, and defeat seemed certain, showing a rare glimpse of anguish on his face. Then, a distant sound. The relieving forces of General Desaix arrived just in time. A sudden, unlooked-for surge of hope. Desaix's counterattack completely reversed the tide, snatching a massive victory from the jaws of defeat for the French. The victory was tragically marred by the immediate death of Desaix, the man who had saved the campaign, shot instantly on the field. The Marengo victory secured French dominance in northern Italy, which was swiftly reorganized into stable, French-controlled client states. Austria was forced to the negotiating table, signing a treaty that recognized Napoleon's vast territorial gains and supremacy in Italy. He stabilized the French currency, introducing the franc, which would become one of the most stable currencies in Europe for over a century. A nationwide plebiscite was held, overwhelmingly confirming him as consul for life. As the public backed the strongman who delivered stability, he signed the Concordat with the Pope, ending a decade of religious conflict and reconciling the Catholic Church with the French state. The Napoleonic Code was born, his greatest non-military legacy, a massive legal text that brought logical coherence to French law. He worked tirelessly with jurists, debating and shaping the massive code, which would set the legal framework for much of continental Europe. He established the Bank of France, providing the essential financial foundation and stability needed for his grand military ambitions. A royalist bomb exploded near his carriage during a public procession. He was unharmed, but the attempt hardened his resolve for absolute power. The final, ultimate transition, he proclaimed himself Emperor of the French. The Republic was formally dissolved, and the Empire had begun. In the grandeur of Notre Dame, before a stunned Pope, Napoleon took the crown and placed it upon his own head, asserting he owed his power to no one. His coronation instantly provoked hostility. Austria, Russia, and Britain massed against him, forming the powerful Third Coalition. News of Trafalgar was devastating. Nelson's crushing naval victory ensured British dominance of the seas for the next 100 years. But on land, he was unstoppable. He executed a brilliant maneuver, surrounding the Austrian army at Ulm and forcing a massive surrender. The sun of Austerlitz rose over the fog. Napoleon lured the coalition into his trap and annihilated the combined forces, his military masterpiece. Austria was humiliated, stripped of vast territory. The envoy bowed, accepting the cold reality of French supremacy in Central Europe. He dissolved the ancient Holy Roman Empire, replacing it with the Confederation of the Rhine, a network of German client states. A crown, representing 1,000 years of history, fell to dust. One era ended definitively, replaced by Napoleon's modern order. Prussia, arrogant and complacent, declared war, believing its military machine was still invincible against the revolutionary forces. In response to Britain's naval power, Napoleon tightened the continental system, attempting to blockade all of Europe from British trade. The vaunted Prussian military machine was utterly destroyed in a single, catastrophic day at the battles of Jena and Auerstedt. Napoleon rode triumphantly through the Brandenburg Gate into a silent, occupied Berlin, stripping the city of its historical pride. From the Prussian capital, he issued the Berlin Decree, formally launching the crippling economic warfare against Britain. He pushed eastward into Poland. The Polish people, dreaming of a restored state of their own, greeted him as a long-awaited liberator. The battle against the Russians at Ely was horrific, a chaotic, bloody, inconclusive grind fought in a blinding winter blizzard. He met the Russians again at Friedland and defeated them decisively, driving them to the brink of military and political collapse. The famous meeting with Tsar Alexander I took place on a raft on the Niemen River, forging a dramatic but deeply unstable alliance. The two emperors divided Europe into spheres of influence. Alexander, captivated by Napoleon's genius, agreed to join the continental system. Napoleon carved out a piece of Poland, creating the Grand Duchy of Warsaw, offering a flicker of hope for Polish independence. The empire reached its territorial zenith. The map of Europe was painted French, stretching from the Portuguese coast to the borders of Russia. Even within his own family, obedience wasn't guaranteed. His brother Lucian refused to divorce his wife, causing a permanent rift. His brother Louis, King of Holland, was too kind to his subjects, often thwarting the emperor's harsh economic policies and plans. Jerome, King of Westphalia, was lavish and frivolous, continually squandering imperial resources, a constant source of frustration. The lack of a male heir from Josephine became a profound political crisis. The stability of the entire empire demanded a dynastic marriage. Portugal, Britain's oldest ally, stubbornly refused to close its ports to British trade, defying the continental system's demands. Napoleon ordered a massive invasion through Spain, aiming to force Portugal into compliance with the crippling economic blockade. The entire Portuguese royal family, protected by the British Navy, fled Lisbon, sailing across the Atlantic to secure Brazil. The Spanish monarchy was collapsing under internal conflict. Napoleon, seizing the chance, lured the royal family to France. He placed his own brother, Joseph, on the Spanish throne, an arrogant move that ignored the fierce, proud nationalism of the Spanish people. Madrid exploded in a furious popular uprising against the French occupation. The devastating Peninsula War had begun. French forces were constantly harassed by guerrillas, the Spanish partisans who used the rugged terrain to inflict deadly, constant damage. A huge shock. A full French corps was forced to surrender at Belen, shattering the myth of absolute French invincibility. Infuriated, Napoleon personally marched into Spain, determined to crush the resistance decisively and restore his brother's authority. The siege of Saragossa was a night war of urban warfare, street by street and house to house, fought against savage Spanish tenacity. The British, under Sir John Moore, landed forces in Lisbon, turning the Peninsula War into a permanent, debilitating drain on French resources. Napoleon chased the retreating British forces through the harsh, cold terrain of northern Spain, determined to corner and destroy them. News of a renewed Austrian threat forced him to abandon the Spanish campaign, leaving the festering wound to his marshals. The Spanish people harbored a deep, enduring hatred for the French occupation. The war would cost Napoleon over 300,000 men. Austria, sensing his distraction in Spain, renewed the conflict, invading Bavaria and hoping to ignite German nationalism against France. Napoleon rushed back to the Danube, executing another brilliant, fast-paced campaign to stabilize the rapidly deteriorating situation. The Battle of Wagram was the largest battle yet, a grinding contest decided by Napoleon's masterly concentration of massed artillery. The Imperial Eagle, symbolizing Rome and absolute power, became the enduring, revered standard of the victorious French army. Austria was crushed again, forced to accept the harsh terms of the Treaty of Schönbrunn, ending the major Austrian challenge to his rule. His relentless secular expansion brought him into direct conflict with the Pope. French troops marched into Rome, occupying the Papal States. Pope Pius VII responded with a solemn bull of excommunication, casting the Emperor of the French outside the pale of the Church. In a shocking act of aggression, French soldiers stormed the Quirinal Palace and seized the elderly pontiff, leading him away into captivity. The emotional climax, Napoleon, hardened by war, faced a devastated Josephine. The future of the dynasty was more important than affection. The divorce was formal, public, and profoundly sad. Josephine maintained her grace, but the sorrow over the political necessity was palpable. She retreated from the Tuileries to her Malmaison estate, retaining the title of Empress, maintaining dignity despite the separation. With the decree signed, his search for a new wife became a strategic diplomatic matter, reviewing portraits of eligible European princesses. He chose the daughter of the Austrian Emperor, Marie-Louise, a stunning alliance with the ancient, powerful Habsburg house. The young, shy Austrian princess arrived in France, a nervous pawn in a colossal political game designed to legitimize the new dynasty. The wedding was magnificent, celebrated at the Louvre. Napoleon was triumphant, having secured his place among the crowned heads of Europe. The city waited anxiously. Cannons boomed across Paris, announcing the birth, a 101-gun salute for a boy. The salute reached 101. A son was born. Napoleon held the infant king of Rome, flooded with personal joy and dynastic security. The empire now encompassed 70 million subjects, from the Baltic to the Adriatic. The map of Europe was French and his allies. His court was lavish, meticulously recreating the rigid etiquette of the Bourbon monarchy, emphasizing his new imperial legitimacy. He worked relentlessly, fueled by coffee, often sleeping only a few hours a night. His immense energy was the engine of the entire continent. Couriers raced across Europe, carrying his written orders for battle, administration, and law, binding the massive empire together. Despite their embrace at Tilsit, The alliance was failing. Tsar Alexander grew deeply resentful of the continental system's economic drain. Napoleon began accumulating a logistical mountain in Eastern Europe. The scale of the planned army was unprecedented. The massive army was a cosmopolitan force, drawn from 24 nations, French, Italian, Polish, German, united under the imperial banner. His most trusted marshals expressed grave reservations about the immense scale and lethal distance of the planned Russian venture. His success had bred hubris. He believed he could force the Russians into a single, decisive battle, just as he had at Austerlitz. He said goodbye to his young wife and heir, a departure from which the emperor, as they knew him, would never fully return. In June 1812, the massive Grande Army crossed the Niemen River, beginning the invasion, a beautiful, doomed display of military might. The Russians refused to fight. They retreated constantly, employing a devastating, scorched earth policy against the advancing French. The enormous army quickly outran its supply lines. Soldiers suffered chronic hunger and deprivation before a major battle was even fought. Summer heat and typhus decimated the ranks. Thousands died from disease and exhaustion. Military discipline began to crack. The French fought for Smolensk, but the Russians abandoned the city. Setting it alight, Napoleon captured a smoking ruin, devoid of provisions. Borodino was a long, bloody grind, lasting hours. Napoleon was victorious, but the Russian army remained intact, a victory he couldn't afford. He rode into Moscow, expecting a surrender. Instead, he found a strange, silent, abandoned city, the ultimate psychological weapon. The city exploded in a firestorm, burning 4/5 of its buildings. Napoleon watched the flames from the Kremlin, trapped in a burning city. He waited, fruitlessly, for a surrender that never came. Autumn turned to winter, and the Tsar's political will remained unbroken. In late October, the devastating retreat began. Early snow fell, turning the entire campaign into a frozen, logistical nightmare. The infamous Russian winter descended with terrifying speed. Soldiers froze, and the huge army turned into a column of starving, desperate men. Cossacks, the irregular cavalry, constantly struck the flanks of the ragged French column, preying on the weak and capturing supplies. All military discipline collapsed. Men discarded their weapons, their uniforms, and their comrades. Survival became the only order of the day. The chaotic crossing of the icy Berezina River was the lowest point of the retreat, losing thousands to the freezing water or enemy fire. Napoleon left the shattered remnants of his army, traveling by sleigh in disguise to Paris, needing to reassert his political control. News of General Malet's disastrous coup attempt in Paris confirmed the desperate need for his immediate return to save the empire. He arrived in Paris, shocking his ministers. He had survived, but the returning emperor was no longer seen as invincible. Inspired by the Russian survival, Prussia and Sweden immediately joined the coalition. The greatest challenge to his rule had begun. He frantically raised a new army, drafting inexperienced teenagers, the Marie-Louisers, to fill the devastating gaps in the ranks. He won a tactical victory at Lutzen, achieved despite his lack of experienced cavalry, but failed to deliver the decisive, crushing blow. He won another victory at Bautzen, but the strategic situation remained unresolved, as his enemies learned how to retreat effectively. Metternich, the Austrian statesman, delivered an ultimatum: surrender all conquered territories. Napoleon, full of pride, refused the terms. The fateful moment, Austria declared war. Napoleon was now fighting against his own father-in-law. The circle of enemies was complete. He won one final, brilliant major victory at Dresden, a testament to his enduring tactical genius even under pressure. But elsewhere, his overstretched marshals suffered a devastating series of defeats, slowly eroding the overall strategic advantage. At Leipzig, 4 nations converged on his position. Surrounded and outnumbered 3-1, Napoleon fought his most desperate battle. Disaster struck during the retreat. The bridge over the Elster River was blown up too early, trapping thousands of French soldiers. The demoralizing retreat across the Rhine. The army was dissolving. Napoleon was forced back onto the sacred soil of France. The Allies invaded France. In the subsequent campaign, Napoleon performed a defensive masterclass, winning against impossible odds. He fought near his old school at Brienne, a desperate, almost romantic last stand of a military genius on his home turf. In 6 brilliant days, he won 4 separate victories against the invading forces, but the sheer, overwhelming numbers kept advancing. His marshals, led by Marmont, refused to continue fighting, choosing peace over a final, destructive show of futile loyalty. The Allied armies marched into Paris. The white flag of the Bourbon monarchy was raised, signaling the end of the First Empire. At Fontainebleau, surrounded by the silence of ultimate defeat, Napoleon signed the treaty, formally abdicating his throne. He was granted the tiny, sovereign island of Elba. The great man was to be confined to a small, insignificant theater. He dressed his old guard in a tearful, moving farewell, kissing the flag, a dramatic, final act of devotion to his veterans. His journey south was marked by abuse and insults from royalist mobs. He was forced to wear a disguise to avoid assassination. He arrived at the small, sunny island, a micro-emperor ruling a few thousand subjects, seemingly contained and defeated. He threw himself into governing Elba with the same energy he managed an empire, building roads and reforming local laws. He watched the news from France closely. The Bourbon King Louis XVIII was deeply unpopular, and the old order was rapidly falling apart. Sensing the moment was ripe, he secretly prepared a small ship, gambling everything on the loyalty of the French people and army. On February 26, 1815, he sailed from Elba under cover of darkness. The 100 Days, the greatest gamble in history, had begun. News of his escape sent immediate shockwaves across Europe. The continent instantly prepared for war once more. He landed on the southern coast and began his historic march north, determined to reclaim his throne through sheer will. He marched through remote mountain passes, avoiding royalist cities, choosing a route of maximum political impact and surprise. The defining moment, a royalist regiment blocked his path. He stepped forward alone, exposing his chest to them. He challenged them, "If there is a soldier among you who wishes to kill his emperor, here I am." They dropped their arms and wept. Marshal Ney, who had promised to capture him in an iron cage, was overwhelmed by the spectacle and defected, embracing the emperor. He entered Paris late on March 20th. Carried into the Tuileries by a frenzied, cheering mob, he regained his throne without firing a shot. Louis XVIII had fled in the night. The Bourbon Restoration lasted less than a year, overturned by one man's audacity. The Allied powers immediately declared him an outlaw, swearing to wage war until he was permanently and finally removed. He frantically raised a new army, drafting veterans and calling up every available man. Time was his greatest and most critical enemy. His strategy: strike fast into Belgium, separate the British and Prussian armies, and defeat them individually before the larger forces arrived. The French army marched north with incredible speed, hoping to achieve tactical surprise over the coalition. He won a victory against the Prussian army under Blucher-Ligny, but crucially failed to deliver the final, crushing blow. Meanwhile, Marshal Ney failed to decisively repel the British at Quatre Bras, allowing Wellington to maintain his strategic position. He detached Marshal Grouchy to pursue the retreating Prussians, but Grouchy disastrously lost track of Blucher's true intentions. A massive rainstorm soaked the entire area, turning the ground into heavy mud and fatally delaying Napoleon's planned attack. On the muddy ridge of Waterloo, the final chapter began. Napoleon, fatigued but focused, observed the field from his command post. He delayed the attack until late morning, waiting for the mud to dry, a decision that bought precious, saving time for Blucher. The initial French attacks focused on key defensive points, but Wellington's forces, sheltered behind the ridge, held firm. A huge French infantry column was unexpectedly shattered by a countercharge of British heavy cavalry, a critical, costly setback. Marshal Ney, in a moment of desperate aggression, ordered massive, unsupported cavalry charges against the unyielding British lines. The British infantry formed into unyielding squares, their bayonets bristling, a deadly, artificial fortress defying the world's best cavalry. The moment of crisis, the Prussian army, having evaded Grouchy, struck the French right flank. The terrifying coalition junction was a reality. In a final, desperate gamble, Napoleon sent the Imperial Guard, his finest troops, up the slope toward the British center. The Guard faltered under overwhelming fire. The cry, "La Garde recule," the Guard retreats, was the psychological death knell of the army. The French lines broke completely. The Grande Army had dissolved into a chaotic, desperate rout across the Belgian countryside. Stunned, physically exhausted, and totally defeated, Napoleon was guided away from the carnage. His military career was over. He returned to a hostile, silent Paris. The politicians were already massing against him, demanding his immediate abdication. Faced with universal opposition, he signed his final, formal abdication. He was now a political fugitive, fleeing the capital. He fled to Rochefort, hoping to secure passage to the United States, envisioning a life as a respected political exile. The harbor was blockaded by the relentless British Navy. Escape was impossible. His destiny lay with his great enemies. He made a faithful choice. He surrendered to the captain of HMS Bellerophon. Trusting in the British sense of honor and hospitality, the warship sailed to England, where thousands of curious spectators rode out to catch a glimpse of the defeated emperor. The Allies made the final decision. He would be sent to the most remote island on Earth, the volcanic rock of St. Helena. He was transferred to the Northumberland for the long, arduous voyage to the South Atlantic, the journey into permanent exile. He arrived at the island of St. Helena, a sheer, volcanic rock in the middle of the ocean. He was now a true prisoner of the sea. His first temporary home was a small, modest pavilion, a shap, immediate contrast to the magnificence of the Tuileries Palace. He moved to Longwood House, a damp, dilapidated structure perpetually shrouded in fog, a prison designed by nature and politics. His captivity was dominated by constant, petty conflict with the suspicious, watchful Governor Sir Hudson Lowe. The battle was over dignity and title. Lowe refused to acknowledge him as emperor, insisting only on General Bonaparte. He began his great work, dictating his memoirs. He was no longer fighting for territory, but for his place in history. He meticulously crafted the Napoleonic legend, transforming his controversial reign into a fight for liberty against autocracy. Even in defeat, his code endured, setting the legal framework for much of Europe and Latin America, the triumph of logic over tradition. The Concordat stabilized church-state relations, a political solution that survived his reign for decades. The massive infrastructure he built, bridges, canals, and the Rue de Rivoli, permanently transformed the city of Paris. The Legion of Honor, awarded for merit, not birth, became an enduring symbol of his powerful meritocratic ideal. Across Europe, his legal reforms were both resisted and adapted, permanently modernizing ancient, feudal systems of justice. His consolidation of the German states inadvertently sparked a wave of nationalism that would eventually lead to German unification. He sowed the seeds of unity in Italy, paving the way for the Risorgimento movement and national unification decades later. The 100 Days, though a military failure, became a powerful, romantic myth, the final, defiant stand of the self-made man. The days dragged on, marked by boredom, melancholy, and incessant fog. He attempted to fill his time with small affairs and conversation. He spoke often of his son, the young king of Rome, now growing up under cold Austrian control, a distant, unreachable love. His health steadily declined. He suffered chronic stomach pain and fatigue. The harsh environment had taken a terrible toll. The circumstances of his death, stomach cancer and elevated arsenic levels, would lead to centuries of debate over possible foul play. He dictated his final will, a document of political propaganda and personal loyalty, meticulously remembering his devoted staff. On May 5, 1821, a violent storm raged outside Longwood. Inside, the emperor, emaciated by illness, drew his last breath. His last, murmured words, perhaps calling out the army or his wife, were lost to the wind and fading memory. He was buried simply, beneath a weeping willow, his tomb unmarked by title at the insistence of Governor Lowe. Immediately, the legend took root. Pamphlets and engravings circulated, portraying him as a martyr, assassinated by the English. 2 decades later, France sought to reclaim its greatest figure. The government sailed to St. Helena to retrieve his remains. Upon opening the coffin, witnesses were astonished. His body was miraculously preserved, adding a near saintly Lawrence to his myth. His return voyage was a massive national event, welcomed by huge, emotional crowds on the coast, a final, triumphant sea journey. In Paris, the procession was magnificent, solemn, and emotional. Under a layer of snow, the people paid their final, reverent respects. He was interred in a colossal, elaborate sarcophagus at Les Invalides, fulfilling his wish to rest among the French people whom I loved so much. The legal texts he created continue to shape the nation, ensuring his hand guides future generations long after his death. The legend of the Little Corporal, the self-made man who brought glory and modernity, endures, shaping French identity forever. His iconic bicorn hat, the symbol of his constant presence on the battlefield, became a revered, potent historical object. Romantic writers, like Stendhal and Victor Hugo, were captivated by his life, portraying him as the ultimate tragic, Promethean hero. His legacy was so powerful that his nephew, Louis Napoleon, was able to seize power and establish the Second Empire in his name. The Emperor Napoleon is gone, but the colossal shadow of the man who rose from obscurity to command a continent remains. His life is an eternal symbol of limitless human ambition, a story that continues to inspire and divide the world. The ultimate irony: the man who brought war to Europe was finally defeated by the forces of mud, cold, and logistics. The military tactics he pioneered, the core system and massed artillery, fundamentally changed warfare forever. The wars he launched cost Europe an estimated 3 to 6 million lives. a terrible price for his search for continental unity. His greatest peaceful achievement, the Napoleonic Code, continues to influence the legal systems of over 70 countries worldwide. The following segments continue the pace, adding texture and dramatic detail to the overall narrative arc. From his early days, Napoleon struggled constantly with his identity, torn between his native Corsica and his adopted, powerful France. His education at the military academies was focused purely on utilitarian knowledge, rejecting all forms of frivolous, non-essential learning. He saw the French Revolution not as a philosophical ideal, but as the sudden, chaotic opportunity he had been preparing for his entire life. His decisive action at Toulon was not just military, it was a ruthless political calculation that positioned him as the savior of the Republic. The constant threat of the guillotine during the Terror taught him to be a political chameleon, mastering the art of survival through ambiguity. His love for Josephine was deeply passionate, yet also deeply demanding, revealing an emotional intensity that mirrored his ambition. The command of the Army of Italy was initially a poisoned chalice, meant to remove him from the center of power, but he turned it into his triumph. He transformed the desperate, starving army into a fiercely loyal fighting force, proving the power of a leader's charisma and vision. His campaigns were based on speed and strategic surprise, always appearing where the enemy least expected, paralyzing their movements. The looting of Italian art was a deliberate act, transferring cultural assets to Paris to legitimize the new republic's cultural supremacy. The Egyptian campaign was an imaginative leap, a dream of Oriental conquest that tragically ended with his fleet's destruction at Abu Qir Bay. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone ensured that even his military failure in Egypt brought an eternal, lasting cultural legacy. His return from Egypt was an immense gamble, a risky political move that paid off because the people were desperate for a stable government. The coup of 18 Brumaire succeeded not through political skill, but through the timely application of pure, intimidating military force. The first consul immediately centralized power, creating a streamlined, efficient administrative state that replaced the old Bourbon chaos. The second crossing of the Alps for the Marengo campaign was a logistical marvel, designed to shock the Austrians with its audacity. The Concordat was a shrewd political act, healing the rift with the Church and securing the loyalty of millions of French Catholics. He was obsessed with securing a male heir, viewing his dynasty as the only way to guarantee the permanence of his revolution's achievements. Placing the crown on his own head was the ultimate statement. His power came from himself and the will of the French people, not from God or heredity. The Orme campaign was a flawless masterpiece of maneuver, surrounding and capturing an entire Austrian army without ever fighting a major battle. Austerlitz, the Battle of the Three Emperors, remains the definitive example of his tactical genius, exploiting terrain and enemy error perfectly. He utterly humiliated the ancient Austrian Empire, forcing them to sign the Treaty of Pressburg and ending their dominance in Germany. The destruction of the early Roman Empire was an act of profound historical consequence, permanently changing the map of Central Europe. The catastrophic destruction of the Prussian army at Genoa and Arnstadt ended a century of Prussian military dominance in a single day. The continental system was his strategic blunder, a futile attempt to defeat Britain economically that only created resistance across Europe. The alliance forged with Tsar Alexander at Tilsit was based on mutual admiration and ambition, but was fundamentally unstable and destined to fail. The Peninsula War in Spain was the Spanish ulcer, a festering wound that tied down hundreds of thousands of French troops for years. The fierce Spanish resistance, fueled by nationalism and religious zeal, proved that popular will could defeat even the Grande Army. His forceful removal of the Pope and the subsequent excommunication were highly unpopular, costing him the moral high ground across Catholic Europe. The decision to divorce Josephine was heartbreakingly pragmatic, sacrificing personal affection for the dynastic security of the empire. His second marriage to Marie-Louise, an Austrian archduchess, was intended to legitimize his dynasty by marrying into Europe's oldest royal line. The birth of the King of Rome fulfilled his deepest political and personal need, seemingly guaranteeing the future of the Bonapartist line. The invasion of Russia in 1812 was an act of extreme hubris, a massive logistical endeavor doomed by distance, cold, and Russian resolve. The Russian scorched earth policy was a brilliant, simple counter-strategy that starved the Grande Armée before a single major battle. Borodino was a massive, bloody tactical victory that failed to achieve its strategic aim, the destruction of the Russian army. The burning of Moscow was the final psychological blow, denying Napoleon the comfortable winter quarters and resources he desperately needed. The retreat was a humanitarian catastrophe, with the Russian winter and Cossack raids turning the Grande Armée into a desperate, frozen rabble. His departure from the army was necessary to secure the political center in Paris, but it was seen by many veterans as a harsh, cold abandonment. The formation of the new coalition, including his father-in-law, the Austrian emperor, was the moment he knew the odds were impossible. The massive youth draft, the Marie-Louises, was a tragic sacrifice of the new generation to fight the desperate wars of the empire's collapse. The ultimate defeat at Leipzig was the Battle of the Nations, where the sheer weight of a unified Europe finally crushed his forces. The campaign of France, though militarily brilliant, was a desperate, final act that could not overcome the overwhelming Allied numbers. The betrayal by his marshals at Fontainebleau was the final act of the tragedy, as his most loyal commanders demanded peace over destruction. His tearful farewell to the old guard created the enduring image of the betrayed hero, fueling the narrative of the Napoleonic legend. His exile to Elba was a temporary containment, a short pause before the greatest, most audacious escape in modern history. The march to Paris during the 100 Days was a bloodless coup, a testament to the magnetic power of his name and persona over the army. The famous challenge to the Royalist regiment solidified the myth. The emperor was safe because the soldiers would not fire upon him. Waterloo was the ultimate high-stakes gamble, a desperate, preemptive strike intended to divide and conquer his powerful enemies. The torrential rain and subsequent mud were the true allies of the British, fatally delaying the French attack and allowing the Prussians to arrive. Wellington's defense was a masterpiece of positioning and discipline, holding the muddy ridge until the final, decisive moment. Grouchy's failure to intercept Blucher was the key to defeat, a catastrophic failure of communication and strategic pursuit. The sight of the Imperial Guard retreating was the psychological moment of no return, signaling the final, permanent end of the Empire. His surrender to the British Navy was a calculated act, seeking refuge with his most persistent, yet potentially most honorable, enemy. The decision to send him to St. Helena was a cold, pragmatic political choice. He was too dangerous to be kept anywhere accessible. Longwood House was a dreary prison, where the former ruler of Europe was reduced to fighting petty, constant battles over protocol and dignity. Governolo's obsession with preventing an escape made the final years a constant psychological torment for the imprisoned emperor. His self-dictated memoirs were his final battle, a meticulous rewriting of history to secure his immortal place as a benevolent revolutionary. The ongoing conflict over the simple title on his gravestone underscored the deep-seated political fear he continued to inspire. Even in death, his simple burial beneath the willow tree, without imperial title, was a final, humble indignity imposed by his captors. The miraculous preservation of his body upon exhumation only deepened the mystique, fueling the popular belief in his historical importance. The Retour des Cendres, Return of the Ashes, was a national outpouring of emotion, symbolically reconciling France with its revolutionary past. His interment at Les Invalides established a permanent shrine, ensuring his image as a national hero would endure for centuries. The remaining segments conclude the narrative with reflection and final thematic points. Napoleon's enduring legacy is the paradox, the modernizer who destroyed democracy, the liberator who imposed tyranny. His life confirms that a single, focused individual with immense talent can fundamentally reshape the political and legal geography of the world. He was the first modern leader to mobilize a nation's entire resources for total war, setting a chilling precedent for the 20th century. His obsession with glory was rooted in a profound insecurity, the lingering feeling of the outsider from Corsica who sought absolute legitimacy. The enduring image of his intense, youthful energy remains a testament to the terrifying potential of human ambition unbound by tradition. The story of Napoleon is a timeless epic about the intoxicating nature of absolute power and the devastating cost of glory. His political rise was enabled by the chaos of the revolution, proving that instability creates the perfect crucible for a strong man. He understood the power of propaganda better than any ruler before him, meticulously crafting his image as the petty caporal, little corporal. His personal charisma was such that men would follow him into the jaws of death, believing completely in his vision of destiny. The Treaty of Amiens, a brief peace with Britain, was just a breathing space, as neither power could accept the other's dominance. The execution of the Duke of Enghien, a Bourbon prince, was a cold political murder, asserting his ruthless authority over royalist threats. He promoted his marshals based on pure merit, creating a system of rapid advancement unprecedented in European history. The Peninsula War gave rise to the term guerrilla, Spanish for little war, demonstrating the power of asymmetrical warfare. The massive continental system ultimately hurt France and its allies more than it hurt maritime Britain, proving the limits of economic warfare. Despite his flaws, he was genuinely devoted to his soldiers, remembering the faces and exploits of his grenadiers. The long years of fighting fundamentally changed the nature of the European state, forcing monarchies to adapt or perish. His military campaigns are still taught in academies worldwide, studied for their speed, maneuver, and decisive application of force. He died without ever seeing his son again, a final, personal tragedy for the man who placed dynasty above all else. The final image of the emperor is not Austerlitz, but the lonely figure staring out at the Atlantic from a windswept Cold Rock. His political legacy, the Code Civil, remains a rationalist bulwark against the forces of chaos and arbitrary rule. He destroyed one empire but inspired the creation of two more, the German and Italian nations, forged from the forces he unleashed. The name Napoleon Bonaparte remains the ultimate, singular touchstone for ambition, genius, and inevitable tragedy in Western history. The memory of the Grande Armée's eagles flying over every major European capital defined an era of French military glory and dominance. He showed the world that a ruler's legitimacy could come from the people's will, not just ancient, divine right. His constant drive forced Europe into a perpetual state of political and military modernization for 2 decades. The Congress of Vienna attempted to erase him, but found that the historical clock could not be turned back to 1789. He remains a figure so immense that every European nation claims some part of his story as victor, victim, or inheritor. His own estimation was immense. My true glory is not to have won 40 battles. Waterloo will wipe out the memory of those victories. He believed his ultimate glory rested in his civil code, arguing that it would outlive any battlefield triumph. The intense discipline he forced upon himself as a boy was the foundation for the iron will that later commanded a continent. Even his opponents conceded his genius. Wellington admitted that his presence alone was worth 40,000 troops on the field. The enduring drama of his life is the spectacular ascent, followed by the catastrophic, yet mesmerizing, fall. His constant battle with Governor Low became a war of words and dignity, ensuring his historical narrative dominated his final years. He knew he was writing history and ensured his dictated accounts emphasized his noble intentions and his betrayal by external forces. His reforms, from education to roads, created the foundation of the modern, centralized French state that exists today. The psychological effect of his constant victories was almost supernatural, making his armies feel truly invincible. His greatest mistake was his inability to grasp the power of nationalism, the fierce will of the people he sought to dominate. The final charge of the Imperial Guard at Waterloo remains the most tragic, glorious symbol of the Empire's defiant end. His surrender to the British was a final, theatrical flourish, portraying himself as a modern Themistocles seeking refuge. The silence that fell over Europe after 1821 was a silence of exhaustion, knowing the world would never again be so dramatically commanded. The story of Napoleon is a constant reminder that the difference between genius and madness is often determined only by the outcome of a battle. His rise was enabled by the French Revolution's principle of Lucario e Veto talents, careers open to talent. The cost of the Russian campaign was estimated at over 500,000 French and Allied casualties, a military bloodletting unprecedented in his time. His court, though initially awkward, quickly adopted the trappings of royalty, blending revolutionary meritocracy with ancient pomp. The Battle of the Pyramids was one of the few instances where he truly faced an army whose methods were completely alien to European warfare. Even as a prisoner, he spent his time tirelessly dictating accounts, ensuring that his version of history would dominate the narrative. His death was a quiet end to a loud life, contrasting the violence of his campaigns with the stillness of his final moments. The bicorn hat, sideways on his head, made him instantly recognizable across the battlefield, a powerful, simple signal to his troops. He died with the satisfaction that he had secured his name in the historical record, even as his empire lay in ruins. His final will ensured his memory would remain tied to the common soldier, honoring his loyal veterans above all else. The irony of his life, he sought to unite Europe by force, only to inspire the nationalistic forces that would ultimately break it apart. The sheer volume of his correspondence and decrees showcases a superhuman capacity for work and attention to detail. The island of St. Helena, though remote, proved incapable of containing the immense political power of his myth. He remains the ultimate tragic figure, a man who reached the pinnacle of human achievement only to crash into isolation and defeat. The memory of the son of Austerlitz defined his career, forever chasing the perfect, decisive victory that evaded him at Waterloo. His name is history, his story is myth, his shadow is still upon us, a testament to the eternal fire of human ambition.